Time of death, 4:32 a.m. I peeled off my blood-soaked gloves, the weight of losing 7-year-old Olivia crushing my chest. 14 hours in emergency surgery trying to repair her tiny heart, shattered in a drive-by shooting while she slept. That's when my phone lit up with Tanya's message from Bali. Derek, I need to be free. 25 years is enough. I want a divorce. Already contacted my lawyer. Don't call. I stared at the screen, my surgical mask still dangling from one ear, the dead child's blood on my scrubs. The second message arrived like a bullet. BTW, needed to secure my future. Transferred $3.6 million from our retirement accounts. My spiritual guide says it's my abundance journey. 25 years of marriage erased in 2 text messages while I fought to save a child who'd never see another birthday. Have you ever had everything you believed in destroyed in a single moment? Keep watching to see how I turn devastating betrayal into the sweetest justice you've ever witnessed. I slipped my phone into my pocket and washed my hands methodically, the same ritual I'd performed thousands of times. 60 seconds, scrubbing each finger, the spaces between. My wedding ring glinted under the harsh hospital lights. Dr. Mitchell? Nurse Valencia's voice broke through. The family's waiting. I dried my hands, straightened my shoulders. I'll speak with them now. Walking down the corridor, my footsteps echoed with practiced precision. The grieving parents looked up as I entered the waiting room, their faces hopeful until they saw mine. We did everything possible, I began, my voice steady despite the tremor in my soul. I held the mother's hands as she collapsed into sobs. An hour later, I was reviewing the surgical notes, documenting every intervention attempted. Dr. Phillips touched my shoulder. Rough night, Derek. That's the 3rd child this month. You should head home. I'll finish these notes first, I replied, not mentioning there was no longer a home to return to. As dawn broke over Chicago, I stood on the rooftop helipad, watching the city awaken. My hands, steady enough to repair the smallest vessels in a child's heart, remained perfectly still as I began formulating my response. Dr. Derek Mitchell, 54, pioneering pediatric cardiovascular surgeon at Chicago Memorial, had built his reputation saving children others had deemed hopeless causes. The first black chief of pediatric surgery in the hospital's history, I'd published groundbreaking research, developed revolutionary techniques, and trained surgeons across the globe. My journey from the west side of Chicago to the pinnacle of medicine hadn't come easy. My mother worked double shifts as a nurse's aide to keep us fed. My father drove city buses 7 days a week to pay for my textbooks. Their sacrifice fueled my relentless drive. I met Tanya during a charity gala where I was receiving an award for my work with underprivileged children. She was dazzling, a marketing executive for a luxury brand draped in designer clothes and confidence. She said my dedication inspired her. I believed her. Our wedding was featured in Ebony magazine, the brilliant surgeon and the beautiful executive, Chicago's power couple. We built an empire. The lakefront mansion, vacation properties, investment portfolios, and the Derek and Tanya Mitchell Foundation for Children's Health. What few people saw were the sacrifices. The Christmas mornings were interrupted by emergency surgeries. The anniversary dinners were abandoned when a child's heart needed saving. The countless nights Tanya slept alone while I monitored critical patients. Your patients will always come first, Tanya had said during our last real conversation before her Bali trip. Not an accusation, a statement of fact. 6 months ago, Tanya had announced her need for spiritual awakening in Bali. I'd arranged my surgeries around her schedule, transferred funds for her extended stay, even hired a property manager for our home while she found herself. Dr. Maya Washington, my colleague of 15 years, had noticed something first. Derek, Tanya's been asking strange questions about your retirement accounts. Just thought you should know. I'd dismissed it then, but I'd also quietly begun documenting everything. 25 years of marriage had taught me that Tanya's spiritual phases often coincided with major financial decisions. What Tanya didn't realize, the meticulous precision that made me a renowned surgeon extended to every aspect of my life. including our finances. Is your heart racing yet? Nothing hurts like betrayal from the person who vowed to love you forever. But stay with me until the end to discover exactly how I reclaimed my power in this journey of transformation. If stories of overcoming betrayal resonate with you, or if you find satisfaction in seeing justice unfold, subscribe to the channel for more empowering narratives like this one. You won't want to miss the surprising conclusion that changed everything. I first noticed something was off on November 12th, exactly 73 days before Tanya's divorce text. She'd received a call during our charity gala, stepping away abruptly and speaking in hushed tones. When she returned, her lipstick was freshly applied, her smile too bright. "Who was that?" I asked as we posed for photos. "Just the spa confirming my appointment," she replied, her hand tightening on my arm. The spa was closed on Sundays, a detail she'd forgotten I knew from arranging countless gift certificates for her birthdays. December 3rd, Tanya started password protecting her laptop. For 25 years, we'd had an open device policy, necessary with our busy schedules and shared business interests. "Why the sudden privacy?" I asked over breakfast. "Just some surprise plans for your birthday," she laughed, though my birthday had passed 2 months earlier. January 9th, I noticed a statement from a new financial advisor on her desk, someone named Rodney Blake from Freedom Wealth Partners. When I mentioned it, Tanya slipped it into her drawer, saying, "Just exploring some women's investment groups. Nothing serious." The most telling incident occurred on January 18th, when Tanya suddenly proposed the Bali retreat. We were in our kitchen, renovated 3 times during our marriage, each time more expensively than the last. "3 months is a long time," I said, reviewing the $47,000 retreat package. "I need this, Derek. You have your surgeries, your patients. What do I have?" Her voice took on that wounded tone I'd come to recognize. "Don't you want me to be happy? I saw some unusual transfers from our joint account," I mentioned carefully. $20,000 to an offshore account last week. Her eyes flashed before softening. "That's for the retreat and spending money." "God, you're tracking me now? This is exactly why I need space. You're suffocating me with your control issues." That night, I overheard her on the phone. "He noticed the transfers. We need to move up the timeline." The most disturbing revelation came when Dr. Isha Reynolds, newly appointed to the hospital board, pulled me aside after a meeting. "Derek, I should mention, Tanya approached me about becoming a signatory on your foundation. Said you requested it. That doesn't seem like your style." I nodded calmly, but inside, pieces were falling into place. Aisha's husband was Tanya's cousin. Where did her loyalties truly lie? 2 weeks after noticing the first red flags, I'd already begun preparing. A flashback to my childhood guided my actions, my grandmother losing everything when my grandfather left. "Never be caught unprepared, Derek," she'd warned. On November 30th, I met with Winston Drake, a forensic accountant specializing in high-net-worth divorces. We met in a private room at the University Club, away from Tanya's social circle. "Document everything," Winston advised, reviewing our financial portfolio. "Every account, every asset, every suspicious transaction." By December 15th, I had systematically secured our most important assets. I moved $4.2 million from our joint investment accounts into a separate trust established years earlier for medical research, perfectly legal and protected. "The trust's mission aligns with your career," my attorney Bernard Thompson confirmed. "No judge would view this as concealment given your consistent donations over the years." I methodically gathered evidence, screenshots of unusual transactions, recordings of suspicious calls, legal in Illinois with one-party consent, and copies of financial statements showing unexplained withdrawals totaling $342,800 over 6 months. On January 2nd, I transferred my grandmother's jewelry, pieces Tanya had always dismissed as outdated, from our safe deposit box to a secure location. These heirlooms, appraised at $890,000, represented my family legacy. Most crucially, I quietly secured evidence that Tanya had been falsifying donation records for our foundation, claiming personal expenses as charitable contributions, a felony offense. This pattern constitutes tax fraud, confirmed Elaine Winters, my tax attorney, as we examined documents in my office after hours on January 10th. The IRS would take a very dim view of this. What Tanya didn't know, I had installed an advanced security system in our home before her departure. Not just cameras, but data monitoring that captured every document scanned, every email sent. The system logged Tanya's 2 a.m. session on January 15th, when she photographed my financial documents, medical license, and signature specimens. The most vital preparation came closest to discovery. While gathering my documentation from our home office, I heard Tanya's key in the door, returning unexpectedly from her spa day. I barely managed to secure the files in my medical bag before she entered. "Working from home today?" she asked, eyes scanning the room suspiciously. "Just grabbing reference materials for a journal article," I replied, noticing a business card that had fallen on the floor. Rodney Blake, Freedom Wealth Partners. Her lover? Financial accomplice? Perhaps both. 3 days after her divorce text, Tanya's actions accelerated from betrayal to outright warfare. My hospital office phone rang at 7:30 a.m. while I was reviewing a patient's echocardiogram. "Dr. Mitchell? This is Gerald Monroe from First National Trust. There's been an attempt to access your foundation accounts with paperwork that doesn't match our records." I gripped the phone tighter. "What kind of paperwork?" "Transfer authorizations with your signature. Mrs. Mitchell submitted them yesterday afternoon, requesting the full $4.2 million be moved to an overseas account. That afternoon, Tanya texted, "Your pathetic attempts to hide money won't work. My lawyer says I'm entitled to half of everything. That includes your precious foundation." 2 hours later, another message. "BTW, the beach house in Martha's Vineyard is being listed tomorrow. Since you're too busy saving other people's children to ever use it, I'm taking the proceeds. Consider it my parting gift to myself." The property, purchased with an inheritance from my parents, had been in my family for generations. The next morning, Dr. Reynolds approached me in the hospital corridor. "Derek, Tanya called an emergency foundation board meeting for Friday. She's proposing to restructure all accounts due to financial improprieties she claims she's discovered." Before I could respond, my phone chimed with a third message from Tanya. "Your career is built on your reputation, Derek. Would be a shame if the medical board heard about your medication issues. Those prescriptions you write for yourself, so problematic. Imagine the headlines, 'Renowned surgeon under investigation.'" I had never written myself prescriptions. It was a fabricated threat, but devastating if believed. That evening, my lawyer called. "Tanya's filed for emergency financial orders claiming you're hiding assets. She's demanding immediate access to all accounts and properties. The hearing is set for next Thursday." The most disturbing development came when Rodney Blake, Tanya's mysterious financial advisor, appeared at the hospital, cornering me in the parking garage. "Dr. Mitchell," he said smoothly, "Tanya and I have a proposition. Sign over the foundation control and medical practice assets now, and we'll let you keep your medical license. Fight us, and we'll ensure you lose everything: reputation, career, legacy." As I walked away, he called after me. "You have until the hearing next Thursday. 8 days to decide if your pride is worth destroying everything you've built." Back in my office, I discovered Tanya had already contacted the hospital board, questioning my mental fitness after erratic behavior following patient losses. She had weaponized my grief over lost patients against me. If I didn't act before Thursday's hearing, I stood to lose not just my assets, but my reputation, career, and the foundation that funded surgery for underprivileged children. The clock was ticking. You feel a sharp pain like a knife piercing through your heart. This is exactly what betrayal feels like. But what happens next will show you why preparation is everything. If you're invested in seeing justice served, hit subscribe now and keep watching to see the perfect revenge unfold. Have you ever wished you could stand up to someone who wronged you? Derek is about to show you how it's done. At 5:30 a.m., the morning after Rodney's threat, I initiated my counteroffensive with military precision. First call, Bernard Thompson, my attorney. Execute protocol safeguard, I instructed. All evidence packets to be delivered as discussed. Bernard didn't hesitate. Already prepared. Timeline, now, before the hearing. My next call went to Winston Drake, forensic accountant. I need the full financial audit report on the foundation, highlighting all unauthorized transactions with Tanya's signature, particularly the ones categorized as consulting fees to shell companies. The report shows $1.87 million diverted over 18 months, Winston confirmed. All traced back to accounts controlled by Tanya or Blake, classic embezzlement pattern. At precisely 8:15 a.m., I walked into FBI agent Marlene Johnson's office. A former patient whose daughter I'd saved after a congenital heart defect was missed by other doctors. "Dr. Mitchell," she greeted me warmly before noting my expression. "This isn't a social call." I placed 3 USB drives on her desk. Evidence of charity fraud, money laundering, and attempted embezzlement from the Mitchell Foundation. Over $2 million diverted to offshore accounts through falsified documentation. Agent Johnson examined the files, her expression hardening. "These signatures on the transfer authorizations, they're forged. My signature was digitally copied from hospital records. The foundation is federally registered and receives government grants. That makes this a federal offense." While the FBI began their investigation, I met with the hospital's chief legal counsel, Raymond Washington. "The accusation about self-prescribing is completely fabricated," I explained, providing complete pharmacy records. "However, I have evidence that Tanya and Blake attempted to access electronic prescription systems using my credentials." Raymond reviewed the system logs. 3 failed login attempts from an IP address in Bali, followed by 2 from a location registered to Freedom Wealth Partners. "This is attempted medical fraud." By 2 p.m., I'd secured emergency protective orders for all foundation assets, backed by affidavits from board members confirming they never authorized Tanya's actions. The most delicate part came next, confronting Dr. Aisha Reynolds. I invited her to observe a surgery, a complex procedure on a 5-year-old with hypoplastic left heart syndrome. "Aisha," I said as we scrubbed in, "I know Tanya approached you about the foundation. I need to know where you stand." Her eyes met mine in the mirror. "Tanya offered me $200,000 to support her claims about your mental state." I recorded the conversation. She pulled a flash drive from her pocket. "I've never forgotten that you operated on my nephew for free when his insurance denied coverage." With Aisha's evidence added to my case, I moved to the next phase, financial containment. My team discovered Tanya had opened new accounts at 3 different banks, preparing to move assets once the emergency hearing granted her access. I filed immediate injunctions based on the FBI investigation, freezing those accounts before any transfers could process. The $3.6 million she'd already taken remained untouchable in Bali, for now. The masterstroke came from an unexpected ally, Tanya's executive assistant, Kendra, who'd witnessed years of manipulation. "Dr. Mitchell, I have recordings of Tanya and Blake planning everything, including how they'd frame you for financial improprieties if you fought back." These recordings completed the picture, revealing their entire scheme. Use the divorce proceedings as cover for embezzlement, destroy my reputation if I resisted, then disappear with millions in foundation funds. With all evidence secured, I prepared the trap. Working with the FBI, we allowed just enough information to leak back to Tanya, suggesting I was crumbling under pressure. Agent Johnson's team traced her communications with Blake, documenting every incriminating response. The final piece, I appeared to capitulate. Through Bernard, I sent a message agreeing to sign over control of foundation accounts to avoid prolonged conflict at a meeting the day before the hearing. The meeting was set for 10 a.m. Thursday at the foundation offices, with all relevant parties present. Bernard would bring the transfer documents. Tanya and Blake would bring their victories smiles. What they wouldn't know, every word would be recorded, federal agents would be monitoring, and the documents themselves contained a brilliantly disguised legal trap designed by the best financial attorneys in Chicago. Would Tanya and Blake fall for it, or somehow slither away again, taking my life's work with them? Everything hinged on the next 24 hours. At 9:47 a.m. Thursday, I arrived at the foundation offices for the meeting. Tanya and Blake were already there, poorly concealing their triumph. Tanya wore a new designer suit, her hair freshly styled, diamond earrings I'd never seen before catching the light. "Derek," she said coolly, finally ready to be reasonable. I nodded silently as Bernard laid the documents on the table. Blake immediately began reviewing them, his banker's eyes scanning for loopholes. "Everything appears to be in order," he said after a moment, sliding the papers toward Tanya. As she lifted her pen to sign, her phone chimed with a news alert. The blood drained from her face as she read the screen. "What is it?" Blake asked. "FBI raids Freedom Wealth Partners offices," she whispered, eyes darting to mine. My expression remained neutral as Bernard's phone rang next. He answered, listened briefly, then addressed the room. "That was Agent Johnson. The Mitchell Foundation's offshore accounts have been frozen pending a federal investigation into embezzlement and wire fraud." Tanya's composure cracked. "What have you done?" she hissed, frantically texting someone. "Nothing you haven't forced me to do," I replied calmly. Her phone exploded with notifications. Text from her lawyer, "Don't sign anything, call me immediately." Email from her bank, "Unusual activity flagged on accounts ending 4733, 9021, and 6588. All transactions suspended." Alert from the hospital board, "Emergency meeting regarding T. Mitchell Foundation allegations. Your presence is required." Blake's phone began ringing too. His face paled as he answered, "What do you mean securities fraud investigation? That's impossible." Tanya lunged across the table, grabbing my arm. "You can stop this. Tell them it was a misunderstanding." "Like our marriage was a misunderstanding?" I asked quietly. She switched tactics instantly, tears filling her eyes. "Derek, please. 25 years together must mean something. I made a mistake, but we can work through this." When I didn't respond, panic overtook her. She began frantically calling her allies, Dr. Reynolds, board members, friends, only to find each call going to voicemail or being quickly disconnected. "Nobody's answering," she shouted, mask completely dropped. "What did you tell them?" "The truth," I said simply, "with evidence." Blake started packing his papers. "We need to leave. Now." As they moved toward the door, security stepped in. "Mrs. Mitchell, Mr. Blake, the FBI has requested you remain on premises." Tanya whirled back to me, desperation in every line of her face. "You set us up." "No," I corrected. "You set yourselves up. I just documented it." Her final attempt was the cruelest. "What about the children we lost? The miscarriages? I stayed with you through that pain, and this is how you repay loyalty?" For a moment, the old grief threatened to overwhelm me. The trap seemed to be failing as I hesitated, memories flooding back. Then Bernard touched my shoulder, steadying me. "Dr. Mitchell, Agent Johnson is here." Agent Johnson entered with two other agents, her expression professionally neutral. "Mrs. Tanya Mitchell, Mr. Rodney Blake, we have warrants for your arrest on charges of wire fraud, embezzlement of charitable funds, identity theft, and conspiracy." As an agent read their Miranda rights, Tanya made one last desperate play. "This is a misunderstanding, Derek. Tell them. It was a marital dispute, not a crime." The $2.3 million transferred from the foundation to accounts in Singapore over the past 18 months suggests otherwise, Agent Johnson replied, placing evidence bags containing financial documents on the table. "We've been tracking these transactions for weeks," she continued. "Particularly interesting are the forged authorizations using Dr. Mitchell's digital signature, captured by keyloggers installed on Foundation computers." Blake attempted to distance himself. "I was merely an advisor. Any transactions Mrs. Mitchell made were her decisions entirely." Agent Johnson smiled thinly. "Your text messages indicate otherwise, Mr. Blake. Once we have the foundation money, we'll transfer it through the shell companies and meet in Bali. Mitchell will never trace it. As they were escorted out, the hospital board members arrived for the emergency meeting, witnessing Tanya and Blake's humiliation. Dr. Reynolds approached me with the other members. "We've reviewed the evidence, Derek. The board unanimously supports your continued leadership of the foundation," she stated formally, before adding more softly, "I'm sorry for what you've endured." Just as justice seemed complete, Blake made his move. Having secretly hired his own attorneys, he presented documentation claiming he was a whistleblower, exposing foundation improprieties. His lawyer argued for immediate release and immunity. "My client was working with Mrs. Mitchell to expose the doctor's financial misdeeds," his attorney claimed. "He has evidence of Dr. Mitchell's own embezzlement." For an excruciating hour, it appeared Blake might slip away. The federal prosecutor looked concerned as she reviewed his claims. Tanya, seeing an opening, quickly aligned herself with Blake's story. "I was trying to protect the foundation's assets from Derek's mismanagement," she insisted, tears flowing on cue. The moment of truth arrived when the prosecutor opened the final evidence packet, the one I'd prepared for exactly this contingency. "These are recordings from Mrs. Mitchell's executive assistant," she announced, documenting 27 separate conversations between the defendants planning this scheme, dating back 14 months. Blake's face hardened as the first recording played. His own voice discussing how to forge my signature, how to launder the foundation money, and how to disappear before anyone discovered the theft. Most damning was Tanya's laughter when Blake asked if I would fight back. "Derek, please. He'll be too busy saving children to notice until it's too late. By then, we'll be living our best life with his money." The case proceeded swiftly through the justice system. Both faced multiple federal charges with overwhelming evidence from financial records, digital forensics, and witness testimony. At the sentencing hearing 3 months later, I sat quietly as the judge addressed them. "Mrs. Mitchell, Mr. Blake, you have been found guilty of crimes that not only betrayed personal trust but endangered a charitable foundation, saving children's lives. The court sentences you each to 12 years in federal prison, full restitution of $6.4 million, and prohibits you from ever serving in financial or charitable organizations again." As they were led away, Tanya looked back one last time. I met her gaze calmly, neither gloating nor broken. Simply present to witness justice being served. The ultimate victory came in the recovery of funds. Through international banking cooperation, $3.2 million was returned to the foundation. My personal accounts would take longer to recover, but the foundation's work could continue uninterrupted. Throughout the ordeal, I had performed 37 surgeries, saving 29 children who would have had no other options. The work, my true purpose, had continued despite the chaos. 1 year later, I stood in the newly expanded Pediatric Cardiac Center at Chicago Memorial. The sign above the entrance read, "Mitchell Center for Pediatric Cardiac Excellence." But it wasn't my name that made me proud. It was the additional operating rooms that would serve thousands more children. The foundation had not merely survived Tanya's betrayal, it had thrived. With transparent leadership and renewed public trust, donations had increased by 230%. We now funded surgeries for underprivileged children across the country, with plans to expand internationally. My personal life had transformed as well. The lakefront mansion was sold, the proceeds establishing a scholarship for minority medical students specializing in pediatric surgery. I moved to a comfortable but modest condo walking distance from the hospital. No more pretense, no more keeping up appearances. "Dr. Mitchell, your 2 o'clock consultation is ready," said Carmen, my new foundation director. Once a parent of one of my patients, she brought both personal commitment and impeccable financial credentials to the role. "And don't forget dinner tonight," she added with a warm smile. Our relationship had evolved naturally from professional respect to something deeper, built on genuine shared values rather than appearances. The most unexpected opportunity had come from the medical board. an invitation to create a nationwide protocol for hospital financial security. My experience had revealed vulnerabilities in how medical institutions protected their assets and charitable foundations. Your case study has become required reading in hospital administration programs, Dr. Washington had told me. You've turned personal tragedy into a safeguard for every medical institution in the country. I occasionally heard updates about Tanya through the legal system. Her appeals had been denied. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by prison uniforms. Her social circle had evaporated once the scandal broke. According to her last impact statement, she spent her days teaching basic literacy to fellow inmates, perhaps finding meaning in service to others for the first time. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place unexpectedly. While organizing old files, I discovered Tanya's journal from our early years together. A single entry from 2 days before our wedding changed everything. Derek's practice is taking off. His family money plus his future earnings make him the perfect target. Mom says doctors make the best husbands for women like us, too busy saving lives to notice what happens to their bank accounts. 2 years to establish trust, then I can start the real plan. 25 years of doubting myself, wondering what I could have done differently, evaporated in an instant. The marriage had been a calculated investment from the beginning, a long con that had finally failed. 6 months after the center's expansion, I sat with a group of surgical residents during their rotation. One brave young doctor asked the question they all wondered about. "Dr. Mitchell, after everything that happened, how did you keep going?" Most people would have been destroyed. I considered this carefully before answering. "There's a principle in cardiac surgery we call controlled bleeding," I explained. "Sometimes, to save the heart, you must allow some blood loss. What matters isn't preventing all pain, but managing it while you focus on the greater purpose." The residents nodded, writing this down as though it were a technical lesson. "When betrayal comes," I continued, "your first instinct is to react emotionally, but healing, whether for a patient or yourself, requires precision, patience, and perspective." I thought about the children who'd received surgeries during my darkest days, lives that would have been lost had I surrendered to despair. Your true wealth isn't in accounts that can be emptied or relationships that can be broken, I told them. It's in the purpose that carries you forward when everything else falls away. As we walked toward the operating room for their observation surgery, a resident asked one final question. "Do you regret any of it?" I paused at the threshold, considering the difficult journey that had led to this expanded center, these eager new surgeons, this more authentic life. "I regret the pain, but not the clarity it brought," I said. "Some hearts, including our own, need to break before they can truly heal." Did that ending satisfy your need for justice? Our channel is dedicated to stories just like this one, where careful planning and intelligence win in the end. If you've ever felt powerless against someone who wronged you, these stories will give you hope. Subscribe now to join our community of justice seekers and catch our new revenge stories every week. What was your favorite moment from this story? Share in the comments below.